Okay, guys. Hello, and I hope you are doing well over your fall break and your virtual learning days. Here is your second video of notes so that you'll be prepared for when we come back to school next week. So yesterday we talked about finding an equation and graphing it, and today we're going to talk about finding an equation from the graph. So yesterday's notes were the inverse of today's notes. Yesterday, I gave you an equation and told you how to use the information given to make a graph. Today, I'm going to give you the graph and ask you to tell me what the equation would be by looking at the graph. So to start, again, you can print these notes out and fill them in as you go with me, or you can write them on your own. To start, you're going to find where your graph crosses the y-axis. So you're going to start at the y-intercept. And I'm going to put out here in parentheses where graph crosses y-axis. So the y-intercept is where your graph crosses the y-axis. Then, once you've found that point, you move from that y-intercept to the next exact point to find your slope. And then you're just going to write it in this form. Remember, the b is our y-intercept, the m is our slope. We talked about that a lot yesterday as well. So let's look at our first example here. From this graph, we are going to start at the y-intercept. So when I'm looking at this line, I need to know where to start. You always want to start where it crosses the y-intercept. I mean the y-axis. That's your y-intercept. So this is our y-axis. It's the line that goes straight up and down through the graph, right dead in the middle. So this line crosses through the y-axis at 4 on our y-axis. So that's our y-intercept, +4. Now, to find what our slope would be, we need to, from this point, move to the very next exact point. And I put a circle on them because sometimes when the line doesn't have circles, it's hard to tell if it's hitting exactly in the corner of 4 squares or not. So I put a dot where it hits exactly in the corner. So from this dot to this dot, I'm going to go up and over. I just need to count those numbers. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. So up 3. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I went to the left 4, which is negative on this x-axis. You see these numbers? That's -4. So I went up 3 and to the left 4. So this is my slope. If we know slope is rise, don't forget, rise over run, the y movement goes on top, the x movement goes on the bottom. So I'm going to do +3 and -4. And that's my slope. So when I come down here to write it in the equation, we know that the slope is going to go here and the y-intercept is going to go here. So we just plug these numbers in, and that's it. So my slope is -3/4 and then a +4. So the actual equation will be y equals -3/4 x plus 4. Let's look at 2 more for today's notes. It'll be quick. There we go. Okay, so for this for this graph, let's find where this line crosses the y-axis. This is my y-axis. So where do these two lines cross? Right there where that dot is. And if we look at what number value that is on the y-axis, it's -1, -2, -3. It's -3. So over here, my y-intercept is -3. And now I need to write down what my slope is. So from this point to this point, I need to figure out how I move. So I need to go up and over, and I just need to count that. So when you move on a graph, you can't just cut through corners. You have to move on a grid. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So up 7 and over 1. And because we went to the right on the x-axis, that's a positive 1. So my slope is 7 over 1, which we know that just reduces down to 7. So when I write my equation, it's going to be 7x minus 3. Okay? Remember, if you can simplify a fraction to being just a whole number, you want to write it as a whole number. If it's a fraction like 2 over 6 that can be reduced to 1 over 3, you want to reduce them down if you can. It'll just make it easier when you're trying to graph that. So this would be our final equation. And then one last equation. Oops, just gonna have to hold that there. Is this line. So this graph was given to us and it's asking us to write the equation of the line for this graph. So again, if this is my y-axis, this line that cuts down the middle, where does this graph cross this y-axis? Well, it crosses right there. They touch, they intercept. So the y-intercept is 1, 2, 3, 5. They cross right at 5, and that's a positive 5. The slope to get from this dot to the very next dot, I'm going to go up and over. I just need to count that. So that's up 1 and to the left 3 in the negative direction. So if my slope is rise over run, I'm going to rise 1 and run negative 3. That's my slope. So when I write my equation, it's going to be negative 1/3 x plus 5. And that's literally as simple as it gets. So for today's notes, excuse me, it's the opposite of what we talked about yesterday. So yesterday you were able to take these two pieces of information and make your graph. But now if you're given a graph, can you look at that and see those two pieces of information to make the equation? So we're going to be working with linear equations, going from different forms, going from different pieces of information given, graphing, looking at the equations of the line, and working with all of that next week when I see you in class. But I wanted to refresh your memory on how to graph, what the slope-intercept form stood for and meant, and how to use it. And then we'll play around with a little bit some other things as well. Please make sure you look over your notes, because not only do you need to have these 2 pages of notes that we did today and yesterday, but you also need to look over the linear stuff in general, because we're also going to look at standard form, which is important. Again, you have notes on writing equations from graphs already, but I wanted to go back over that again. You've got tables that might be given to you. You've got points that might be given to you, and you have to find things from it. You have another form that your linear equations can be put in, which is point-slope form. And then the very original page was our slope-intercept form when we started this. So make sure that you have all those notes and you're going over that so that we are ready to go next week when I see you guys. Thank you.